There's a peculiar trick our minds play on us. We can have 300 decent days and a dozen terrible ones. Yet when December arrives and someone asks how our year was, we somehow remember it as awful. This isn't a flaw in our character. It's a feature of human consciousness that we need to understand and perhaps outsmart. You're not having a bad year. You've had a few bad days that you keep replaying in your mind's theater over and over until they've colonized your entire sense of the present. This distinction matters more than it might seem at first glance. Because if you're having a bad year, that feels permanent, encompassing, definitional. But if you've had a few bad days, that's just weather. Weather passes. The difference between a happy life and an unhappy one may not come down to how many objectively good or bad days you experience. Instead, it might depend entirely on which days you choose to think about repeatedly. We are, in a sense, curators of our own mental museums. And like any curator, we have enormous power over what gets displayed prominently and what gets stored in the basement.
Some problems don't fit into days. Consider the person navigating a brutal divorce while their business simultaneously collapses. They wake up each morning to the same intractable situation. There's no single action that will resolve the divorce today. No meeting that will undo years of financial loss by sunset. These large-scale negative experiences create a unique kind of suffering because they violate our natural human desire for closure and completion. We're built for discrete tasks. Hunt the animal, gather the berries, return to the cave. Our brains reward us with dopamine when we complete things. But modern suffering often comes in the form of chronic, ongoing situations that stretch across months or years. The business that's slowly failing, the relationship that's gradually dissolving, the chronic pain that greets you every morning like an unwelcome houseguest who's forgotten they were never invited. How do you win the day when the problems are too big for a day to contain? The answer might lie not in solving problems, but in moving them. Just move the needle, even slightly. In any given day, progress on a massive problem might feel negligible, almost invisible. But 30 days of invisible progress becomes visible. 90 days becomes transformative. This isn't positive thinking or toxic optimism. It's something more pragmatic. The recognition that in certain seasons of life, maintaining is winning. Not every season is for conquest and achievement. Some seasons are for not losing ground, for treading water, for surviving with your humanity intact. There's a quiet heroism in maintenance that our culture rarely celebrates. We lionize breakthroughs and transformations, but we ignore the person who simply shows up again, who tries again, who keeps the machine running when every gear wants to seize up. Yet this might be the most important skill for a well-lived life, the ability to endure difficult seasons without letting them metastasize into a difficult existence.
Here's where things get interesting philosophically. If we accept that our experience of life is shaped more by what we pay attention to than by what actually happens, then we have a choice to make about our attention. Specifically, we need to ask ourselves, what counts as a good day? Most of us operate with an unconsciously calibrated scale. We think a good day requires something objectively significant, a major win at work, an exciting social event, some external validation that justifies our internal sense of satisfaction. But this calibration dooms us because most days are ordinary. Most days are just days. What if you radically recalibrated? What if a good conversation over coffee could make your day? What if completing one small task, reading one chapter, taking one walk could be enough to tip the scales toward goodness? This isn't lowering your standards, it's refusing to hold your happiness hostage to rare events. The person who says, "This conversation made my week," might seem to have a small life, but actually they've discovered something profound, They've learned to extract maximum experiential value from minimal inputs. They're efficient at happiness. Meanwhile, the person who needs extraordinary events to feel good is dependent on a supply chain they don't control.
Let's be honest about something. This approach still means your mood is being dictated by circumstance. We'd all like to imagine we could achieve some Buddhist equanimity, maintaining perfect inner peace regardless of external conditions. But for most of us, that's not realistic. Pain hurts. Loss stings. Failure disappoints. The question isn't whether to be affected by circumstances. We will be, because we're human, but rather which circumstances we allow to dominate our internal landscape. When you wake up with chronic pain, it's the first thing you notice. Your day begins with discomfort. And yet, if later that day you have one genuinely good conversation, one moment of genuine connection or accomplishment, you have a choice. Does the pain define the day, or does the good moment? Both existed, both were real, but one will become the day's representative in your memory. One will be the thing you file away when you ask yourself, how was today? This is the choice point. This is where human freedom actually lives, not in controlling what happens, but in controlling what it means. There's a strategy here that goes beyond mere positive thinking. It's about letting good moments metastasize in the same way we usually let bad ones spread. You had a good podcast conversation? Let that be the thing that made your day. That good day? Let it contaminate the whole week. That good week? Let it redefine the month. We're usually so stingy with our own joy. Something good happens and we immediately minimize it, fence it off, prevent it from spreading. We say, well, that was nice, but, and then pivot to all the things that aren't working. But we don't do this with bad experiences. When something bad happens, we let it bleed everywhere. We give it permission to ruin not just the moment, but the whole day, the whole week, sometimes the whole year. What if we reversed this tendency? What if we were as generous with our good experiences as we typically are with our bad ones? None of this is about pretending problems don't exist. The business that's struggling still needs strategic attention. The chronic pain still needs medical treatment. The relationship that's failing still requires honest conversation, or perhaps honest ending. But here's what matters. Your ability to persist through difficult seasons, to maintain effort, to keep showing up, all of that depends on your internal experience of the season. If you experience an entire year as uniformly terrible, you'll run out of steam. You'll burn out. You'll quit, or spiral, or make desperate moves from a place of panic. But if you can find ways to have good days even in bad seasons, you buy yourself time. Time to let the incremental progress accumulate. Time to let the situation evolve. Time to discover solutions that weren't visible at the outset. For those with long-term goals, this might be the most crucial skill of all. The difference between people who achieve difficult things and people who burn out trying isn't usually talent or even effort. It's the ability to make the hard journey feel somewhat bearable, to make the ride more enjoyable, even when the destination is still far away. In the end, we are the stories we tell ourselves about our lives, not the objective facts, the stories. And we have more control over these stories than we typically exercise. You can have the same set of experiences as someone else and come away with completely different stories. One person has a year with some setbacks and remembers it as the year everything fell apart. Another person has the same year and remembers it as the year they learned resilience, made progress despite difficulty, found unexpected moments of joy. The facts are the same. The story is different. And the story is what you'll live with. The story is what will shape your next chapter. So maybe the most important question isn't, how do I have a good year? But rather, how do I think about my year? Because you're not having a bad year. You've just been thinking about the wrong days.